Let's start. So we're studying Augustine's Epistemology. Saint Augustine, who is one of the most important medieval Western thinkers. Okay. So who is one of the most important medieval Western thinkers? There you go. We're studying his epistemology. So just to give you a brief recap, जो हमने पहले किया था, yeah, just to give you a brief recap of what we had done before. What is his epistemology? Basically, it starts with a response to the skeptics. जो skeptics थे, वो कहते थे कि हमें बिल्कुल मतलब the highest knowledge that we can get about the world is just probability. मतलब हम surety और absolutely कुछ जान ही नहीं सकते हैं दुनिया के बारे में. वो स्केप्टिक्स थे. स्केप्टिसिज्म जो है एक ओपिनियन है. स्केप्टिसिज्म वो यही है कि यू कैन नॉट गेट knowledge about the world completely or absolutely. We studied about that briefly. कि अभी तक this is a school of philosophy that says that you cannot get knowledge of the world completely and absolutely. So they are skeptical. This word used in common language is like jo doubtful hote hain, right? Skeptic is a doubtful person, somebody who has a lot of doubts. So Augustine जो है हमने शुरू किया इसकी epistemology understanding कि Augustine is responding to these skeptics saying that hey, you know, what you're saying is wrong. क्योंकि what is the argument that he gives? You need to understand that argument and then you can write it in your own words. मगर वो समझ आनी चाहिए वो argument क्या है. वो argument ये है कि वो बोलता है कि let's assume कि I am mistaken about everything in the world. It's let's just say that as if the world is just an illusion, it's a dream, and I'll wake up one day realizing all of this was imaginary and it was an illusion. All of this was imaginary and an illusion. तो he just assumes, ये मतलब इन्हें एक एग्जाम्पल देता है कि let's just assume कि सब कुछ जो है दुनिया में वो एक illusion है और ये एक ख्वाब जैसा है and I'll wake up one day from this dream and it'll all be an illusion. Let's just agree with you, which is the skeptic opinion, that the world is not real and knowledge of the world cannot be acquired. But he says अगर ये भी होगा, अगर हम इतना extreme position भी लेंगे, but finally we will have to accept कि ये जो doubt कर रहा है इंसान, ये doubt हो रहा है about the world, that I am the one who is doubting that the world is real. I am the one who's accepting maybe it could be an illusion, but I cannot doubt the fact that I am doubting. मतलब I am real. मैं अपने आप को कैसे doubt कर सकता हूँ? मैं ही तो ये सब सोच रहा हूँ. So with that, he understood that the most real thing, the most real entity in the world is the self. So let me take you through this. jaldi jaldi jo humne kal padha tha. You can take your notes from here. So Augustine time and again attacks the skeptic thesis, jo skeptics ki opinion thi, that a high degree of probability is the most that the human mind can attain. That's what the skeptics used to say, that at the most you can get probability, you cannot get absolute knowledge about the world. मतलब हम जो सोचते हैं ना, हम जैसे अभी, for example, all of us are taking knowledge from the world. So we interact with the world through our senses. We interact with the world through our mind. We touch things, we smell things, we taste things, and that's how we know about the world. Skeptics used to say कि ये real नहीं है. This is not real. All of this experience we can get only a high degree of probability about the world. We cannot get absolute knowledge about the world because there is something which is lacking. Okay? That is the skeptic opinion. But Augustine attacks that and says this is wrong. This is wrong. So in other words, man cannot attain certain knowledge. ये थी skeptic opinion. Skeptics की जो opinion थी वो थी man cannot attain certain knowledge. मतलब यकीन वाला इल्म आपको नहीं मिलेगा इस दुनिया से. Now, Augustine जो है, he refutes this thesis in his book Contra Academicos, this one, saying that a man can attain certain knowledge. So ये आपको most important चीज, अगर let's say you get a question on Augustine's epistemology, write it in bold. According to Augustine, a man or human beings can attain certain knowledge or knowledge that has certainty. Human beings can attain knowledge that has certainty. Human beings can attain knowledge that has certainty or certitude. It's the same thing. So in his reply to the question of skepticism, how do you know that this world even exists if the senses are mistaken? So ये skeptics बोलते थे कि आपको कैसे पता है कि world जो है वो real है? Because the senses are mistaken. Senses तो हमें कभी बहुत times fool करती हैं. We sometimes, see reflections of things and we feel that this is real. Like we discussed, mirage is an optical illusion. You drop something in water, it appears to be bent. अगर आप scale drop करेंगे पानी में, वो बिल्कुल bent लगती है. फिर जब आप बाहर निकालते हैं, आप देखती हैं तो बिल्कुल ठीक है. So this is an optical illusion, and our senses are most of the time fooled by these kinds of illusions. So the skeptics, they used to say, how do we know that the world even exists if the senses are mistaken? मतलब senses हमें गलत knowledge भी दे सकती है, तो हम कैसे बोल सकते हैं कि world actually है? So उस पे Augustine कहता है कि even if he is asleep and dreaming, he can refer to the world. So understand and say without chance of error that either it is one or it is not. मतलब what he's trying to say is that even if a man is asleep, let's say, ये सारी चीज एक ख्याल है, सारी दुनिया एक dream है, and he can just refer to the world. मतलब he's just interacting with some shadow of the world. मगर जो चीज बिल्कुल कतई है, जो चीज which is absolutely यकीन वाली, वो ये है that it's me. If I'm mistaken about the world, I exist. If I'm the one who's doubting the world, I am existing. मैं तो हूं, चाहे दुनिया है या नहीं है, चाहे वो real है या unreal है, but I exist because I'm the one who is doubting. I'm the one who is being fooled. So ये आप ये जरूर लिखेंगे. This was his famous saying, if I'm mistaken, I exist. So you'll be able to understand that Augustine is saying no matter how much we doubt, no matter how much we doubt the existence of the world, no matter how much we doubt the existence of the world, the fact is that we are the ones, no matter how much we doubt the existence of the world, the fact is that it is us. It is us who are doubting. It is us who are doubting. So he would say, if I am mistaken, bracket में लिखेंगे about the reality of the world, because that's what he's discussing. If I'm mistaken, bracket में लिखेंगे about the reality of the world, comma, I exist. So this is his famous saying. So that's how his epistemology starts. Now, his answers clearly suggest the Cartesian cogito ergo sum. ये आप पढ़ेंगे Descartes जब आप पढ़ेंगे. I think next unit में है ये. Very important modern philosopher. He also had the same opinion. It'll make it very easy for you to accept. कि Augustine की जो opinion है, if I am mistaken, I exist. और Descartes की आप opinion पढ़ेंगे next unit में. I think, therefore I am. That's very famous. वो आपको फिर similar लगेगी. ठीक है ना? All right. Now, let's go. Let's move forward now. Conditions of intellectual knowledge. लिखेंगे आप. Conditions of intellectual knowledge. After having established knowledge is certain and it is attainable, he moves on to the conditions of intellectual knowledge. The first step सबने याद रखना है कि Augustine first establishes that certain knowledge, यकीन वाली knowledge, certitude वाली knowledge, that is possible. We can have certitude wali knowledge about the world. First, that's his first project, you could say. That's his first opinion. And then he says that it is attainable. Ek to hai bhi, and we can attain it. So his opinion is the complete opposite of the skeptic opinion. So he is not a skeptic at all. He refutes and he rejects the skeptic opinion. That's very, very important. Okay? So you could say Augustine is a realist. Augustine is a realist. Augustine is a realist. Realist is someone who accepts the reality of the world, who accepts that the world that we experience is real. Okay, moving on. There are two ways by which a man, now he's going to talk about the conditions of intellectual knowledge. The conditions of intellectual knowledge. There are two ways by which a man can arrive at knowledge of intelligible objects. So he says that there are two ways by which a man can arrive at knowledge of intelligible objects. Intelligible objects. That is number one, matlab, how can one attain knowledge? That is his question. How can one attain knowledge? So he says, number one, by rising from the data of sense to an understanding of the hidden causes of things and ultimately to a knowledge of him who is the highest cause. So एक ये बोलता है, he says that there are two ways by which we can get knowledge of things. Number one, he says sense data se hum shuru karenge. We'll start from sense data to an understanding of the hidden causes of things. तो sense data से शुरू करेंगे, then we'll start the hidden causes, then we'll go into the hidden causes of things, and ultimately to the knowledge of God for him, because you have to understand he's a devout Christian scholar, so ultimately to a knowledge of him or God who is the highest cause. This is number one. Right? So he's giving us the conditions or the ways in which we can arrive at the knowledge of things. He says you start from sense data, you go to an understanding of the hidden causes of things, and ultimately to a knowledge of God who is the highest cause. तो आप दुनिया से शुरू करेंगे with your senses, फिर आपको understanding मिलेगी of the causes, उससे आपको God की भी understanding होगी as the highest cause. As the highest cause. If you remember, we studied Aristotle के 4 causes. So Augustine is highly influenced by Aristotle as well. और Aristotle के जो final cause था, final cause of the world is God. Right? So he also believed, and Augustine obviously is very religious, was a very religious saint in the Christian tradition. So for him was this idea that you start with an understanding of the world, you start with your sense data, you get an understanding of the hidden causes. दुनिया के पीछे क्या वो छुपे हुए राज हैं, उससे आपको God की नॉलेज मिलेगी. God is the highest cause. God ही की वजह से सब कुछ दुनिया चल रही है. He is the highest cause. This is number one way of how to attain knowledge. Now, number two, he says, the truth is indwelling in us, and the most excellent means of attaining higher intellectual knowledge is the contemplation and the study of our own intellectual life. ठीक है, ये दूसरा वे है. एक है वे ऑफ द सेंसेस. सेंसेस से फिर हम समझते हैं दुनिया को और फिर हम गॉड को समझते हैं. मगर दूसरा वे जिससे हमको नॉलेज मिल सकती है वो है अंदर झांकना, इंसान के अंदर झांकना. वो जैसे अल्लामा इकबाल का ये है शेर है, अपने मन में डूबकर पाजा सुरागे जिंदगी. अपने मन में डूबकर, literally, he says that the truth is inside of us, it dwells in us. And then the most excellent means of attaining higher intellectual knowledge is the contemplation and the study of our own intellectual life. So according to Augustine, एक दूसरा तरीका है इल्म हासिल करने का, to get knowledge, which is to go and contemplate within oneself. Or he starts by saying that जो ये truth है, the truth has been given to us. It lives in us. And then we can get this truth by contemplation and reflection of our own selves. By contemplation and reflection of our own selves. It is of introspection. Introspection क्या हुआ? यही reflection. इंट्रोस्पेक्शन हुआ खुद ही अपने बारे में सोचना, अपने मन में डूबना, is introspection, for which purity of the heart and the practice of virtue are necessary. It is of introspection for which purity of the heart and practice of virtue are necessary. He says, ये सबकी बात नहीं है, ये सबकी बात नहीं है ये इस किस्म की नॉलेज हासिल करना. ये वही लोग कर सकते हैं जिनका दिल साफ है और जो प्रैक्टिस ऑफ वर्च्यू, जो अच्छे काम करते हैं. तभी आपको अपने दिल में जो छुपा हुआ हक है, जो छुपी हुई हकीकत है, वो मिलेगी. So these are two ways. अगर आपको आएगा, जैसे for example on Augustinian epistemology, आप पहले लिखेंगे firstly वो किस तरह reject करता है skeptic की opinions, वो किस तरह अपना ये एक establish करता है कि certain knowledge can be attained, and then you will move into the two ways in which a human being can attain knowledge according to Augustine. Number one is through the senses. Then you go to the causes of things, and then you go to the ultimate cause, which is God. This is number one, ये वाला. Number two आप लिखेंगे जो है अपने मन में डूब कर. Number two, the second way to attain knowledge is that we know that the truth dwells in us. It lives in our hearts. And to attain that truth, one has to undergo contemplation and the study of our own intellectual life. मतलब इंट्रोस्पेक्शन होगी, रिफ्लेक्शन होगी, अपने मन में हमें रिफ्लेक्ट करना है to get that truth. But it is not possible for everyone. Only people which are pure of heart, they have pure hearts, and they practice virtue, अच्छे काम करते हैं. Those are the ones who can get this kind of a higher intellectual knowledge. Right? Okay, so I'm seeing aapka time is up. But what I'm going to do, because we started late, if at all you don't have a class right now, you can stay and we'll complete the epistemology. If you have a class, you can go ahead with your class. I'm anyways recording this. फिर मैं आपके साथ ये link share करूँगी. ठीक है? So up to you. You want to stay? You can stay. You want to go and attend your class? You can do that. Anyways, I'm recording this for you. ठीक है ना? So we'll finish this, inshallah. Now, moving on. When the heart is more pure, the soul is also freer from all the defilement, and by which the mind can mirror him, who is the source of all truth. It's very easy, and especially because all religious traditions have almost the same thing. तो हमें ये आसानी से समझ आएगा. अगर जैसे for example हिंदू tradition में भी ये है, और मुस्लिम tradition में भी ये है, सिख tradition में भी ये है कि दिल जब साफ होगा तब वो हकीकत को एक आईने की तरह दिखाएगा. This concept exists in all religions, and Augustine, because he is he's one of the greatest Christian thinkers, so he is saying almost the same thing, that the heart, the more the heart is pure, the freer the soul is from the defilement. Defilement हुआ ये जो उसमें मैल पड़ जाती है. Defilement is the मैल, is कुछ किस्म की गंदगी, and by which the mind can mirror him. तो हार्ट प्योर होगा, उसमें फिर सोल में कोई किस्म की मैल नहीं होगी, कोई किस्म की गंदगी नहीं होगी, वो बिल्कुल साफ शफाफ होगा, इंसान का दिल भी, इंसान की रूह भी. फिर यही दिल और यही रूह एक सोर्स ऑफ ट्रूथ बनता है, अकॉर्डिंग टू ऑगस्टीन. This becomes the source of truth. So these are the two ways in which one can attain intellectual knowledge according to Augustine. One is through sense data. Just for example, abhi aap sense data se knowledge le rahe. You are listening to me, you are looking at the document, and you're taking notes and you're trying to memorize, and that's how you're taking. So you're using first way. ये वाला जो way है. उससे फिर आप क्या कर सकते हैं? If you go deeper into knowledge, let's say you go deeper into philosophy, you go deeper into religious studies, you will ultimately get a knowledge of God, who is the highest cause. तो आप दुनिया को समझ के फिर God को समझेंगे. That's the first way. मगर second way जो है of attaining intellectual knowledge, that is through the heart, directly through the heart. आप दिल से ही हकीकत तक पहुंचेंगे. वो होता है जो हम रिलीजियस रिचुअल्स के वक्त करते हैं, जैसे कभी नमाज पढ़ते हैं या दुआ करते हैं या कभी अकेले बैठकर we meditate on the truth, or we read our religious scriptures, whatever they may be. उससे जो हमको वो एक किस्म की रिफ्लेक्शन on our own hearts मिलती है, that reflection is attainment of knowledge. We are getting some kind of knowledge. We are getting some kind of knowledge, but that knowledge is not coming from sense data. That knowledge is coming from our hearts and our souls. So he says, Augustine says, jitna saaf dil hoga, the purer the heart, the freer the soul is from defilement, or defilement is the impurities. Defilement is impurities. And the more it can mirror God, the more it can reflect the truth of God, who is the source of all truth. God is the source of all truth. तो एक है आप truth attain करना चाहते हैं about the world, so you go indirectly to God through the world. For Augustine, to attain truth, you can go either through the world or you go directly to him, to God, who is the source of all truth. There are two ways. Ya to you can attain the truth about the world, so you study the world through your senses, then you think about it, then you think about the hidden causes about the world, and finally you reach the highest cause, which is God. So वो एक indirect path है, मगर all human beings use that path, whether they reach the final goal or not, but we all use our senses. But according to Augustine, एक दूसरा path है जो आप समझे shortcut है. वो एक direct route to the truth है, that if you want to seek the truth, you will go to the one who has all the truth, who is the source of all the truth, which is God. Okay, so आप अपने दिल को साफ करके, आप अपनी soul को बिल्कुल साफ शफाफ करके, you will start mirroring, just like a mirror reflects, you will mirror the truth about God. Obviously, God is not, an image. God is not a body. You can't mirror him. You can mirror his truth. You can mirror his existence. You can mirror his attributes. You can mirror his knowledge. Okay, now this is important to understand. Augustine, following the Platonist tradition, says knowledge is not derived from sense perception or experience, but they are some that have impressed upon our minds a priori. Okay, Platonist, obviously, we know this is just something that you should write, that Augustine was inspired by Plato, so he was a Platonist. He was a Platonist, and also, if you remember, we mentioned another person, Plotinus, Plotinus. So Augustine was also inspired by that Plotinus philosopher. Plotinus was indirectly influenced by Plato. So Augustine को बोला ही जाता है Platonist because of his views that are very similar to Plato, and Plotinus. And he says that knowledge जो है directly sense perception से नहीं मिलती है, but ये क्या होता है, हमारे जहनों पे एक किस्म के impressions डाले होते हैं पहले ही, एक किस्म के इंप्रेशंस डाले होते हैं पहले ही, जिससे हमें नॉलेज मिलती है. जस्ट टू रिमाइंड यू, वी डिड प्लेटो, और प्लेटो में हमने वो पढ़ा था. Plato divided the world into two parts. One was the world of the senses, one was the world of forms. He said senses wala world is not real, forms wala world is real. और मगर he said जो ये forms वाला world है, ये forms वाला world है, जो ये real है, जो actual reality है, वो ही हकीकत है दुनिया की. जो ये सेंसेस वाला वर्ल्ड है, it just gets it gets its reality from the forms, from the world of forms or ideas. It gets its reality from the world of forms or ideas as it participates in that world. ठीक है. So ये यही बोल रहा है कि वो जो impressions हमारे जहनों पे पहले से ही डाले गए हैं, वो impressions उस world of ideas के हैं, उस world of ideas के impressions डाले गए हैं. This is something that you may want to write. बट मेन आपको इस पे कॉन्सेंट्रेट करना है, ये दो चीजें एंड जो हमने इससे पहले पढ़ा. Now here Augustine rejects the Platonic doctrine of anamnesis as an explanation of the presence in the human mind of knowledge that is not derived from sense experience. So no need to go through this, because no need to go through this, but just to let you know what this is. Plato jo the, the philosopher Plato, he would say that kyunki the real world is the world of forms, real world is the world of ideas, wo jo hamari knowledge in this world hai, because now we are in the world of senses, we are just recollecting the knowledge that we knew before, मतलब हम सब ये याद कर रहे हैं, हमें पता है ये जो नॉलेज, जो ये हकीकत है दुनिया की, हम ये जानते हैं क्योंकि हम भी आए हैं वर्ल्ड ऑफ फॉर्म से, हम भी आए हैं वर्ल्ड ऑफ आइडिया से, हमने हकीकत देखी है. अब जो हम ये यहाँ इंटरैक्ट करें दुनिया के साथ, हमको वो याद आ रही है, वो पुरानी दुनिया. If you remember, even in the Islamic tradition, we have something similar, which is कि मतलब वो पुराना एक स्टेट, उसे क्या बोलते हैं, अहदे अलस्त, सूर्य आराफ में है, something like that. Obviously, these are very different, मगर a good way to understand that Plato's idea was this theory of recollection, that all of our knowledge, we are just trying to remember. We are just trying to recollect what we knew before when we were a part of that world of forms and ideas. When we were part of that world of forms and ideas. But nothing to go into detail. You can just here say that Augustine was obviously a Platonist, and he says that knowledge is not derived from sense perception or experience, but there are some, but the knowledge is impressed upon our minds a priori. The knowledge is impressed upon our minds a priori. A priori होता है पहले से ही. Prior बोलते हैं ना, पहले से ही, बाद में नहीं, मतलब बिफोर सेंस एक्सपीरियंस जो नॉलेज आपको मिलती है वो ए प्रायोरी होती है. एन एग्जाम्पल ऑफ ए प्रायोरी वुड बी जो हम जानते हैं अबाउट द वर्ल्ड, लाइक फॉर एग्जाम्पल लॉजिकल नॉलेज, द होल इज बिगर देन द पार्ट. कोई चीज जो फुल है, दैट इज बिगर देन उसका पार्ट. दिस इज लॉजिक. We all know this. ये हम a priori जानते हैं, हमें ये देखने की जरूरत नहीं थी, हम ये पहले से ही जानते हैं. This is a priori knowledge. Okay, या numbers का होना, that is also considered a priori. मतलब knowledge which is acquired prior to sense experience. Okay, let's go into this, and we are almost done. हाँ, let's just do this, and maybe tomorrow we'll finish this, or Monday ko inshallah, theory of divine illumination. But this is something that everybody should be very clear of, that God is extremely important in Augustine's epistemology, in Augustine's philosophy. That should be absolutely clear to everyone, because he is a Christian thinker. So even when he's taking Plato's doctrine, even when he's taking from Plato, the Platonic tradition, which is from Plato's philosophy, thoda, but main focus जो Augustine का है, वो है on God. That you have to understand. The main focus is on God. So he does say that knowledge is a recollection. It's an exercise of the memory, but in the sense that when I know, I actualize what is learned in my mind, eliciting the truths by a process of concentration, pre-existence of the soul. So this is he is not accepting Plato ka ye recollection theory. He's not completely accepting that. क्यों? क्योंकि Plato's recollection theory believed that the soul has pre-existed. Plato's recollection theory accepts that the soul has pre-existed. इसीलिए तो हमें knowledge है. Plato कहते हैं कि हमें इस दुनिया में knowledge है because हम पहले से knowledge लेकर आए हैं. But Augustine is rejecting that bit of Plato, but he does say that yes, knowledge हमारे दिल में है, जो हमने अभी यहाँ पढ़ी. Truth हमारे दिल में है, and that we can acquire by means of when we reflect and we introspect. Even if you don't write this, you don't have to. You can just say he's a Platonist. He's a Platonist. He does accept certain Platonic ideas, some bits of Plato's philosophy. Yeah, आप लिख सकते हैं, but you don't have to go into detail if you are explaining this in detail. हमारा पॉइंट है कि हमें समझ आए कि ऑगस्टीन के नजदीक नॉलेज जो है वो दिल से भी मिल सकती है. शॉर्ट रूट टू नॉलेज दिल के अंदर, अपने मन के अंदर है, और लॉन्ग रूट टू नॉलेज थ्रू द सेंस डेटा है. ठीक, ये दो चीजें आर एब्सोल्युटली इंपॉर्टेंट, एंड दिस इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. ये भी लिख लें आप. Augustine believes that divine illumination is required to achieve this, to achieve knowledge. Thus, we attain knowledge by the illumination of God. This is very important. And I suggest you write this, that Augustine believes that जब तक हमें God की वजह से illumination नहीं मिलेगी, तब तक we cannot get knowledge. That's Augustine's opinion. So he believes that divine illumination is required to achieve knowledge. Until and unless God does not illuminate your heart, God does not enlighten your heart, you will not achieve knowledge. So Augustine believes that we attain knowledge only by the illumination of God. He believes that we only get knowledge through the illumination of God. So these are three things. Let me revise so that you remember. Whenever you have to write on his epistemology, there are actually four, but fourth one हम Monday को करेंगे inshallah. Three things है. पहले तो ये वाला जो ये he deals with the skeptic thesis. He rejects them. He says, no, we can get certain knowledge about the world. Knowledge is certain. We can easily get it. He rejects skepticism. He says, even if I doubt the entire world, even if I reject the reality of the entire world, even if I'm mistaken about the entire world, the fact of the matter is I exist because I am the one who's doing this. So meri reality to hai. Then you have to go into the conditions of intellectual knowledge, or he says the ways in which intellectual knowledge can be attained. He gives us two ways in which intellectual knowledge is attained. Number one is through sense data. We get an understanding of the hidden causes of the world, and ultimately to a knowledge of God, who is the highest cause. ये हुआ longer route. So sense data से हमें hidden चीजें मिलेंगी, इस दुनिया की hidden causes मिलेंगी, उससे हमें God की knowledge मिलेगी, who is the highest cause. Number two, the second way to attain knowledge is through introspection and reflection of the heart. You go deeper into your own heart and you get the knowledge through your heart, through a contemplation of your heart. And that is a shorter route because you are going directly to God, who is the source of all truth here, who's the source of all truth. And you could write that he is a Platonist because he agrees with Plato in many areas, in many areas about knowledge, but he does reject Plato's idea of recollection, Plato's theory of recollection. And most importantly, the human mind is only capable to understand, to attain knowledge by the illumination of God. Agar illumination of God nahi hogi, the human mind cannot get knowledge. So it has to be under the illumination of God that human mind gets knowledge. So this is very little that's left. Inshallah, we'll do this on Monday and we'll move to Thomas Aquinas then on Monday, inshallah. All right, take care. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining. Have a good day. Assalamu alaikum.